G'day and welcome back. I'm Todd and this is Toxic Garage Customs. This video is very much out of sequence in compared to some of the other videos you've seen on the International L110. What I have here is some of the first footage I took of when I bought the chassis. Well, they're more stills than they are footage in some cases. When I bought the chassis, when I bought the cab, the transportation of those, and then the whole kit and caboodle sitting on a car trailer out the front of my property while I tried to assemble it to some form so I could actually move it down my driveway to where it is now, to where you've seen it. So this video goes through a variety of different stages, including those, and it will finish up around about the point where I'm squashed underneath the cab on a car trailer by the side of the road, and I've fabricated some mounts for the cab to sit on so that I can take some further measurements. That'll be part one of this video series, and part two we then remove the whole kit and caboodle, take it down the bottom of the driveway and start fabricating it so that we can actually mount the cab up. So that's part two. So enjoy part one. It's different, but hopefully if you're doing something like this, you'll get a fair bit out of it. So let me know. Thanks. I'll see you at the end of the video. Okay, back into it. It's been about a week, probably a bit less, since I last worked on anything really. So I have some 75 by 50mm RHS here, and I have some brackets. Now these brackets are fabricated by a friend of mine, Justin Scott from Scotty's Fabrications and Painting in Muswellbrook, New South Wales. Shout out to him. Justin makes these specifically to mount things to HJ Holden chassis, Ute, 1-tonner or panel van chassis. And how it works is that this particular bracket gets this RHS welded into it, sits on the chassis on an angle, picks up the rubber mounting points onto the Holden chassis, and then this RHS gets welded through, and what happens is that you're creating a subframe sitting on top of the Holden chassis to mount your new cab to, so in this case my International cab. So I've got it set up on the saw. It needs to be cut at a 10-degree angle. It's a bit hard to film the fact that's 10-degree angle. It needs to be cut on a 10-degree angle to come into the bracket so that it sits at the correct angle. So as I've said previously, I like collecting tools. This is an engineering square, and it's I don't know if that's what it's called, and it's got degrees on it. So it was set at 90. I've moved it around to 100. That gives me 10 degrees off a 90-degree angle, and then I transferred that angle onto this steel, and then I marked it down the sides with a square, so just straight down as a 90. Then I've set my trusty second-hand GMC cut-off saw at 10 degrees, using that to change the angle, but checking it with my angle finder. I'm going to clamp this in here and cut it shortly, and be aware that if I cut this to 90 degrees, to 10 degrees, then the other end will also have the same angle. So I do one cut and get the angle for two pieces. So it was set on a 90, I varied it to 10 degrees past a 90, each side will be 10 degrees past a 90, which is what I need to go into these brackets. So I'll cut it, I'll set it in place, I'll show you what it looks like when it's sitting there, and then I'll tack it and so on and so forth. This is essentially what it looks like. I haven't cut this yet. So it sits in there, sits nicely. It actually comes up to the height of this bracket here. It's sitting on a funny angle at the moment. And then these are the mounts that go into the Holden chassis, upper and lower mounts, and the bolts. And there's nuts obviously that go there. And that bolts onto the front of the Holden chassis. And then at the back, 1500mm or so down, then you put another mount underneath that, and it mounts to the back of the midpoint on the Holden chassis where a 1-tonner ute or panel van body would be mounted. So enough talking, I'll cut this, I'll come back here. Okay, so I'm pretty sure my camera fell over again, so I don't know how much you're seeing of this, but we'll splice it to make it work. So you can see that that's coming in at 10 degrees. This will all sit nicely exactly as it needs to. It'll be welded on all contact points, mounts under here. Bit of a breezeway under here, and it works very well. It's a very strong system because essentially you've got the brace, obviously it's a nice thick plate, and it's gusseted at the same time. It looks attractive with the holes in it, and then the other end, as I said, it just sits on a rubber mount underneath. This sits on a rubber mount, and away you go. along. Got the second piece here, haven't cut it to length yet. Probably should do that, I guess. So I'll cut it to length, same length as this. I think I started at 1550. It'll end up being docked down sort of 50 to 70 mil or something to get its size. I just want to show you this. It's amazing how steel becomes magnetic when you cut it. Pretty much everything, if you work with steel, you will have seen that. Pretty much everything just becomes magnetic. Anything you pick up. So yeah, this is quite literally just from the process of cutting it with the saw. It turns it into a magnet. All of those little bits of stuff there are bits of steel that have joined onto each other, little stalactites. Potential splinters in your hands. Hundreds of them, thousands of them. Gloves. I have the second one here. I have cut the steel. So, as I said, I wanted about 1500 mil. When I've cut that one, the first one, I think I cut the steel, or I don't think, I cut the steel at 1553 millimeters. No particular reason. I wasn't particularly fussed whether I got it exactly to a measurement. I just wanted more than 1500 with a little bit of extra. So what I did with this second one, I cut it also to exactly 1553 mil. As I said, I'm going to dock this end off later, but the reason I did them the same length is that when I've got the cab on it and I'm trying to get everything square and in the right place, if I've got two two subframe braces, subframe members that are the same length and mounted the same way, then I can easily do cross measurements, triangulation and so on to check my diagonals to check that it's square and so on. If they're different lengths, you're just making life unnecessarily difficult for yourself when you're trying to get things right in the first place. Now this here, I started tacking it on and put the first tack and the second tack, and what I hadn't noticed after I put the first tack on, it had actually skewed a little bit. So it's a little bit hard to see, but the gap at the top here is a little bit wider than at the bottom, and the same on the other side. It's only a little bit. I put a square on it. It's about a degree, maybe 2 degrees out of square. But all I need to do, I've left one tack there. I've decided this side of the steel needs to be hit down. So all I'm going to do is hit it down, and by doing that, it will move. Actually, I need to take it the other way. I need to hit it up. It will bring the steel across closer to here. So I'm not going to try and do that one-handed. But the point of that is, I've only put 2 tacks on. I checked it, realised it needed to be moved. I'll just cut through one of the tacks. I'll adjust it. It'll be right. I can continue on and have a good product rather than the slightly out product. Got the 2 rails tacked in place. Just realised I forgot to re-weld that. So tacked in place. So I have a left and a right, and they're identical. I'm going to be completely honest here. They're not exactly identical. I'm not happy with this. I'm actually going to cut the welds here, and I'm going to lift the back of this up a bit. As I said, these ears don't sit above the bar. These ones do. It's just moved a little bit. 6 tack welds just at the back here, and I should be able to move that. If not, I'll cut them all, cut whatever I need to just to move it. It'll take me 5 minutes max. So identical length, identical items. Look on the goods. Step closer. Okay, so got the subframe brace sitting here on the trailer ready to go. There's one on the other side as well. We've got a few of the Holden mounts and so on sitting here ready to go. Where I am at the moment is under the front guard at the front of the chassis. The Holden chassis. As I said, this is a HJ 1-tonner chassis. HJ Holden 1-tonner chassis. So what you have under these, on these chassis, is there's a mounting point here, a mounting point over there. These bushings sit in there. So they have a recess part there and a cross tube in them. And the other one sits over there. I'm not going to pop them in all the way at the moment. They sit there. And then the lower part of the mount comes up from underneath. There's a hole up under here. comes up under there, and once the two parts are together, they stay together. Then the bolt goes through. I'm not actually sure on Holden's whether the bolt comes through from the top. Actually, I think it must come through from the bottom and then go mount into the cab floor. I think there must be a captured nut on the cab floor. Me, however, what I'm going to be doing is I put that there, and then this brace with this hole and this hole sit on top of that. That's why the 10 degrees angle, because it's a bit hard to film, but those 2 points must be 10 degrees offset to each other. And then the subframe will run down from the front to the back, and as you can see, it's about 80 millimeters in from the outside edge, so it'll come through over here, which is out towards the edge of the frame, and then it'll run right the way through to the back. Now if we go to the back, and I'll point out a couple of things. The steel I'm using here is all new. When I say new, it's never been used before. It's actually only about a month and a half old, but it's been sitting in the weather, so it gets surface rust on it, but it's solid. No issue with that. This cab, however, this chassis, however, you can see it's got a couple of rust issues. Spot there. Very typical for these mounts to rust out. I think this is the only one I need to repair, but in the past have had to repair a number of them. What I'll do is use a piece of steel, again clean steel, it's just got a little bit of surface rust in it, 3mm thick in this case, and here I'm going to cut out the rusted section, and weld this in, drilling a new hole in the same spot, same size and so on. Down here I'll be doing the same. I'll do an investigation. I don't think there's any more than that on this part, but I'll investigate. I might sort of end up going back further than what is obvious. While I've got it open, I'll give it another check inside. I'll also clean it out, give it a blow. There's usually dust and stuff in there. There is holes underneath those chassis that it is supposed to allow the stuff to fall out, but they get blocked up. Yeah, so I'll patch that. I'll repair whatever needs to be repaired. I think it's pretty solid otherwise, and go from there. It's not the end of the day, not the end of the world, I should say. So once I do repair that, then like the front, there's another mount. It will sit there like that. They pop down nicely once the hole's correct and so on. And then the back of my subframe will sit on top of that. Now I presume that all of these Holdens are built the same length, but rather than presume, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the front in place, drop the bolts down, get it where it needs to be, run the back through, sit it on top of that mount. I'll come in from underneath with a Sharpie marker, because again, there's plenty of access in underneath. That's actually a C channel. Come in from underneath. I'll transfer a pen mark, Sharpie mark, onto this, into the center of it. Then I can drill a hole. And what I will do is I will drill, once the hole's there, I'll put a nut inside that will pick up. I can't remember if these bolts are going to be long enough. They should be, because they're the bolts for it. I'll get nuts for these. For some reason when you get the kit they don't give you the nuts, and I think I answered that before, because I think the nuts are actually captured onto the bottom of the Ute 1-tonner panel van bodies. So I'll stop saying that. So drill a hole, bring the bolt up from underneath. Bring the bolt up from underneath. I will screw the bolt into the nut. I will weld the nut there so it's captured, and then forever onwards, when I want to mount the back, it'll just be a matter of popping the bolt up through there, popping the bolt up from there up into here, bolting it, and then this will be clamped in place, and then I will eventually plate box the end of this so that it's finished. Give it a bit of extra strength, stop stuff from getting in there, and I won't have any reason to get in there after I've put the captured nut in there. At the front here, I will probably do the same actually. I've done this before, but I actually can't remember what I did. I'll probably weld a captured nut here and a captured nut here. Bring it up through the bush from underneath. And then be able to do it up from underneath. And I can get there because there's plenty of room to get a socket up and so on. So, a bit of thinking out aloud and explaining. So, one of those in either side. All sounds easy. This cab sitting here, I'm here by myself. I've got to somehow get that thing under there. I'm pretty sure I've got to trim some more inner guard off as well. Just to go back a step, the reason I've assembled all this and got the guards on the front and everything is so that I could work out where my cab's going to be mounted. Now, I may bring it back a little bit. As I've said before, I like the wheel to be slightly forward in the guard opening, but it may be a little bit too far forward. I may bring the cab forward 10 or 15 mil, which will essentially bring me so that this lip here, it's probably about 20 mil there, this lip just here on the back of the cab will be pretty much in line with the back of this cross member on the chassis. That way I won't have to cut it, won't have to do anything to it, bring it forward, and I think the clearance will be right. If I wanted to drop this chassis down, the cab down on the chassis, then I could push that cross member up into the floor and do some other changes and so on, but to be honest, I'm actually pretty happy with the height of this, so I'm not going to do that. What I have done, now that I've got the cab sitting here at the moment, I've got reference points, so that's just the back of the cab. I've done the same on the other side. This mark here is just where the front of the door is. I've done the same on the other side. And if I do decide to move this forward, then whatever I move it forward, those marks will move forward, and that's where I will reposition it. I suspect that when I do that, it will involve a little bit of extra trimming of the inner guard on the cross member and so on, so the control arms, but that's okay. And to get, torch just fell on me, and to get this in there, I'm going to have to cut out a bit more of the inner guard, which I always knew. I've just been doing it little by little, but what I'll end up doing is just cutting the base of that inner guard to the same height as the floor of the cab, which is up about, I think it's up about another 60 mil or so. So I'll take the bottom of that off. It affects nothing. Makes this easier to slide through. Looks like it's staring at me. Okay, well, I'm not sure where I'm going to bring you back at, but it'll be somewhere further than this. Okay, so I'm now upside down underneath the cab. That's the back of the chassis. That's my tape measure falling. Now over here, I've only put this side in so far. So this is the rear, sitting on the mount, looking forward. That's the front point. You can see, I haven't really looked yet, but you can see there's a brace that runs across the front of the cab there, goes up over the transmission and so on, and I can see a hole just there, just after the point, just, look, that's my finger, about there. A couple of holes in fact. That, oh, a heap of them. I was going to say, I reckon that's the original cab mount. I still think it's the original cab mount. I'll double check, but I think what I'm going to do is run an outrigger, an outrigger off my subframe across this way, for this side, same on the other side. I'll just use the offcut of this steel that I've got actually. I've got about another 600 or 700 mil of it, which I think should be just fine. Bring an outrigger. I'll raise it up so that it actually contacts the frame of the cab. So in other words, it'll sit up. It'll sit up higher, sit up here. I don't need to rubber mount between my subframe and the cab because it's already rubber mounted between the chassis and the subframe. Don't need double rubber mounting. So these cars will go away. What is this, a road? Anyway, at the back here, there's some holes here and some on the other side as well. On the other side, there's also these little bits here, which I'm not sure which is the original mounting point, but I'll be honest, I think this is a far more solid looking point. A little bit of crustiness in here, but I can fix that. Now, you can't see that, I don't think. I think that's a more solid point, but if I have to, I'll pick it up from here. But again, I could run something on top of here, pick up there, and then fix it rigidly to that. Put a nut up here or something. I'll have to work that out. Shouldn't be too hard. Could even just use like a triangular gusset type frame set up across there. That could work. Or I could pick up some more RHS, bring it across here, across there, and run a subframe, run a cross member that connects to this and comes across here. It's really hard to show this. Move back a bit. Goes from there, across there, and joins the other subframe, which isn't there at the moment. But this is the other hole, just here on the other side, or I could pick up that. Either way, there's mounting points. They look pretty straightforward. This is the Holden cross member. You can see I'm sitting on it. So what I'm going to do, because my sills are also contacting, I'm going to lift it up, lift the cab up, maybe just 15, 20 mil maybe, to allow for sagging of the bushes eventually. But also what I did on my chef is I cut the top of this off. My engineer was fine with that. Cut the top of this off, replated it and just made it lower. I'll probably do that. I think I want to get the cab as low as I can. But I still need to allow that when those bushes sag, that I don't want my cab to roll on the chassis. Okay, so I've got a plan. Did I get my tape measure? Yes I did. Got to take some measurements and then I can make some decisions. I should have brought a Sharpie marker under here with me also, because this here I can now come in under there, and you can see my hand in there. I can come under there and mark up through the bush and mark where the hole needs to be centered for this. I do need to, however, move it forward a little bit, back a little bit first. So all in good time. I'm happy. Looks good. It's got to be solid. I'm making progress. Okay, and that's the end of part one in the International chassis to cab mount fabrication, the subframe as I call it. The next one we pick up from where we leave off there, and we continue along. This particular setup, I've used very similar setup on my Chev cab, Toxic, that is on a HJ Holden chassis. And it really doesn't matter what sort of cab you're putting on to a Holden chassis, you can use the same sort of mounting techniques. Now, just to make it clear, those cab mounts, those braces, the brackets that make up the beginning of that, the laser cut parts, they're from Justin Scott, from Scotty's Fabrications. Look him up. He's on Facebook and he's on various other things. He's up around the Musclebrook area. I've used his mounts a few times. I know other people that have used them. They're great. They really are a great starting point. So big call out to Justin. He's a good guy and he makes a good quality product. So yeah, good luck with that, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.